Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks interesting to you guys, please carry on and watch the video. And also one more thing before we get into the video, if you enjoy what I do here, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me out and lets me know you enjoy the video. But with all that out of the way, let's get into that video.
Okay, so starting off with our silver dragon here, what I've actually done is I've started off by priming it in black, and then I'm going to come in with our first metallic color, and this here is going to be gunmetal, and this is a nice deep dark silver color. Since we're of course painting up a silver dragon here, it's going to be great to start off with that the darkest color in silver is what we've got. Now, the reason why I've chosen to do a black base coat instead of coming in and doing a full silver base coat over top of it, and why I'm going straight into sort of basically a highlighting step with dry brushing over it like I am here, is because what I want is when we're dry brushing over top of it and using it to basically become the base highlight, because what I'm doing is I'm dry brushing over it, but I'm being a little bit heavier with it, trying to turn it into more of a base coat, like an overbrush rather than a complete highlight of a dry brush. And that is because what I want to do is I want to pick up all of these areas and these little scratches, marks with the color. Sort of by depositing it really randomly, it's going to look like it's a worn down and beat up dragon, because it'll leave different rates of silver all over the place, and I think it's going to leave to a more effective look overall as a base coat, rather than if we had just painted the whole thing in a base silver color. And since we have that fully base coat down with our silver color, I think it looks really awesome and intimidating. And what I'm doing now is coming in with a lighter silver color. In this case for me, this is oily steel, which is actually a little bit brighter than this gunmetal color I'm using. And I'm focusing it more on the higher points, still again in a really rough, like overbrushing kind of thing, you know, really sort of being heavy with the dry brush, really trying to layer it on there. But this time I'm super focused on the areas where the sunlight would naturally hit, so the tops of areas where their face and their neck is pointing out towards the sun, more focusing on that rather than the underbelly. Just areas like that is what we want to pick out. Of course, you know, the nice big areas of the backs of the wings, we want to get them nicely, and that is going to give us a nice easy transition between our dark silver and our light silver. Probably pretty hard to see it on camera because I'm using two silver colors that are very close together, but you can definitely tell when you're doing this in person. Okay, now this is the part where you could be pretty much done with the miniature if you wanted to be here, if you want a plain silver dragon. But what I'm doing is I'm going to be dry brushing on a couple of colors here, just in particularly onto the wings, because I wanted to give it a sort of like pearlescent shine effect, sort of like maybe like an oil slick, or just when you see something super shiny that has a lot of reflections, it can sometimes have a nice like sort of rainbow colored effect. I'm not going too crazy with this. I'm just going to be picking out two colors rather than a heap of colors. I just wanted there to be something more interesting than if we had just painted the entire thing progressively lighter silvers. I think that's a little too boring for me, and I wanted to sort of spice it up and add a little bit of color in here. And as you can see, I'm using a nice bright blue, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be focusing this on the just the wings here, so I'm not really worried too much about any of the other areas. I might pick out a couple of light areas once I finish dry brushing with just a little bit that's left onto my actual brush, and pick out maybe a few scales here and there to add in a little bit of color. But as a general, I want to focus this blue color just predominantly on the wings to give us an interesting looking shine. So there's a bunch of colors you could use to do this with. For me, I'm going to come in here now with a pink, and this is sort of going to bleed together with the pink and the blue to give it sort of like purple transitions in there as well, because I'm doing it so close after one another that the paint is still, you know, just slightly a bit dry after the dry brushing, so we get a little bit of mixing of colors there. Now you could probably do this in whatever color you wanted to here. There's such a option of colors you could have to give this some interesting looking like a reflective color off it, but I just wanted it to be like it was super big and intimidating, and having this nice vibrant colors on those wings. I think it just giving it something interesting to look at. But I think since we got our metallic base coats and we're giving it a dry brush over it, it still looks metallic enough, and it looks like maybe it's just the trick of the light that the silver dragon is using here and reflecting colors to give you this awesome effect. That's what I'm trying to go for anyway. Whether it works or not, hey, but I think it's just making it a little bit more interesting than if we have just gone from dark silver to light silver. I think that's just way too boring. So adding in things like this can really help spice up your miniature painting. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a wash. Now I'm going to apply this to the entirety of the dragon we've done so far, so giving everywhere a good base coat with the wash here, really trying to get it to set more into the recesses than anything else. But the main reason why I want to come in with a black wash is to dull everything back down a little bit, because we're progressively going a little bit brighter with some of the silvers, and we use some bright colors here for this reflection color on the dragon. Is that it's starting to get a little bit light, and we want to have some little areas of highlights, because I still want to do a nice area with very, very bright silver color to really show off the highlights itself. So darkening it all back down, plus it's going to help tie the shine of the wings that we have there with our blue and pink and purple, to tie in just a little bit more with the rest of the color of the dragon itself. And it'll also darken down all those little areas between the scales, giving it that nice really dark black to the bright silver scales with this nice worn look that I'm trying to go for here. But this step is totally up to you. If you want to do this, you could totally just leave this out, but for me, I want to try and make it just a little bit more cohesive together. But if you, by all means, if you want it to be nice and super vibrant and really get this thing out quick, you could easily just sort of stop here and paint in the eyes and the teeth and that, and voila, you have yourself a really good usable tabletop miniature. But for me, I'm going to go just a little bit further. So once we have that wash completely dry, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a khaki color here, and I'm going to be using this for all the underbelly scales, because what I'm going to do here is I feel like having the whole thing silver, like I said, looks good and everything, but it's just a little bit like lackluster in terms of interest on the piece. So I wanted to come in and paint the underbelly scales a completely different color here. Now you probably could come in with like a dark gold or a bronze or a brass, something like that in there as well, if you want to keep with the metallic theme. But for me, I think that sort of crosses on the other line of the dragon's territory a bit, with like your bronze and your copper dragons and stuff like that. So I didn't want to sort of like step onto those boundaries too much with the silver dragon. So instead, I'm just going with a nice neutral khaki tone color and give it something interesting to play off with, having just nice matte colored scales on the underbelly, and then the nice big shining bright silver scales everywhere else. Then once we have those underbelly scales all picked out, what I want to do now is I'm going to come in with a sepia wash, and I just want to give them a nice wash over all of those nice underbelly scales. Now, a couple things with this miniature, if you're copying what I'm doing here, is it's really, really difficult to get into those underbelly scales. Man, that was a mission, because it's sitting on this, perched on this rock. It is really difficult to get into underneath all those belly scales all the way down to where its tail is. So be very careful if you're applying a wash on this miniature in particular, with it crouching over this rock. They're very, very close to each other. So what you want to try and avoid is a lot of pooling where you don't want it to be, and accidentally placing the wash over top of our silver areas, which is super easy to do with it crouching over the rock like it is. So just something to be aware of if you're painting up this miniature in particular. So then, to make our dragon stand out just a little bit more with a few extra colors, I'm just going to come in with a grey here, and I'm going to use this to pick out all the spikes on our miniature. So I was going to leave them silver, but I think that was going on my whole theme of I wanted to have it stick out a little bit. And I just thought that the black would also be a great color to do this, and it'll probably stick out a little bit more. I think I wanted it to be just a little bit subtler than that, just a slight color change, so it's not too distracting if we've gone straight with the black claws and talons and spikes on it. I think just coming in with a nice neutral grey, in this case mine's sort of like a neutral bluish grey to give it a little bit more color, I think just makes it stand out just that little bit more by having a few matte areas on the piece makes the metallic scales really stick out and gives you something interesting to look at while you're looking over the piece, with having some non-metallic areas and some highly nice shining metallic areas. Makes it just a little bit more interesting in my eyes. Then once we've painted in all those claws and spikes on our dragon, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip the miniature over and just paint in a few like little striations and wear and tear marks on the dragon's underbelly, so you can see that it's got some nice highlights and it's got some use and scratches. Now this is part, like I said, when we're painting the underbelly scales as well, is very, very difficult, so I'm only going to be sort of more focusing on the ones that I can easily get to with my brush, not being too crazy trying to pick out every single one under the underbelly. I think that's just a cause for disaster if I keep trying to pick out every little area underneath the belly, because it's going to lead me to accidentally putting some paint on somewhere I don't want it to be. So picking out just the main prominent ones I can reach with my brush and that are easy to see. And then once we have that done, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my brightest silver color that I have. In my case, this here is mithril, which is a super like white bright metal silver color that I want, and I'm going to use this to pick out a bunch of the scales all over the miniature, on all the ones that are nice and in prominent areas that are really going to help pick out the upper details where the light would be shining off and giving you the most interesting looking effect, to the point where the sun is reflecting off it nicely, but it's going to also have a lot of areas that I'm not going to worry too much about. I want to pick out scales here and there, sort of like the light is bouncing off certain scales that are caught in the light, rather than giving everywhere and all over like a dry brush with this. Now you totally could do that, give everywhere a dry brush over with the silver, but I felt like it was going to start washing out a lot of the colors that we have in our silver if I was to start doing that. So I just want to pick out some key areas to really help separate that out. As well as that too, I also painted in the mouth and the eyes of the dragon. The mouth was the exact inside the mouth there. I painted up in the exact same color that I used to dry brush that pink and on the wings, so it's just that simple color there. And then the eye of the dragon is the blue that we used for the wings, so just using the same color over and over there. I just thought that would also work to give a little bit more cohesive color to the dragon as well, by making the inside of its mouth and the eyes the same color as that reflection off the wing. So with all that though, guys, I think we are done. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time cleaning it up, finish off painting up that base, and then let's go into those glamour shots and see how it came out. And with all that complete, we have finally finished painting up our silver dragon from the Dungeons & Dragons miniature range by WizKids. So I hope this video has been helpful for you guys, whether you want to follow along with what I did here, or you just want to use the video as some inspiration in painting up your own miniatures. But with all that said, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.